The day Apollo 12 launched was my birthday, except 34 years before me. Apollo 12 was the second manned mission to land on the moon out of 6 missions. Most people have only ever talked about the first mission, but don't realize how important the second mission was for NASA. Since I was little, I've always been interested in outer space and how we got there. I have done an ample amount of research on the Apollo 12 mission, reading different websites and old newspapers on this day in history. The Apollo 12 mission was a significant achievement in the space exploration. This showed many capabilities for NASA to overcome and to successfully land on the moon for a second time and to help with the future space achievements. I will tell you how Apollo 12 got from choosing their astronauts to landing in the South of Storms region of the moon to collecting samples and back to landing in the South Pacific Ocean. So the first thing you need to figure out is which astronauts to send to the moon. Hard choice, right? The astronauts for Apollo 12 mission was Commander Charles Conrad, Commander Module Pilot Richard F. Gordon, and Lunar Module Pilot Alan L. Bean. They were the 3 that served as the backup crew for the mission on March 1969 Apollo 9 mission. When choosing these astronauts for these missions, according to nasa.gov, they select astronauts through careful processes, such as flight experience, physical fitness, who has already flown into outer space before, and shows great skill as a pilot and engineer. Conrad has flown into outer space twice, one being the Gemini 5, and the second one being with Gordon on Gemini 11. Now that we know a little bit about our crew, let's look at how they got to the moon. They launched Apollo 12 out of Cape Kennedy, Florida. It was a cloudy, rainy day, but they continued with the launch anyway. About 36 seconds into launch, they were struck by lightning, and then again at 52 seconds into launch, as you can see by this picture. The launch controllers lost complete contact with the astronauts. This video showing the launch. The boosters on the spaceship still continued firing. The astronauts checked the electrical circuits, but there was no issues that were occurring, so they continued into orbit anyway. They orbited until November 19th, and that was the day they landed on the Oceans of Storms region of the moon. Pete Conrad was the 3rd man to step foot on the moon. His famous words were, "Whoopee, man, that may have been a small one for Neil, but that's a long one for me," according to an article by National Public Radio. Let's now look at what they did on the moon. According to History.com, in a 2010 article called Apollo 12 Lifts Off, they state that once they landed, the 2 astronauts made 2 lunar walks where they collected lunar samples and investigated the Surveyor 3 spacecraft, an unmanned U.S. probe that soft landed on the moon in 1967. As you can see in this picture, this is the Surveyor 3. Also, according to book Apollo 12 Revisited by Randy L. Corbett, he states that a major goal of the Apollo 12 mission was to land near the Surveyor spacecraft in order to demonstrate pinpoint landing capability and retrieve some of the Surveyor hardware so that the effects of 31 months of space weathering could be studied. Also, the site lay on or near a bright ray of the relatively young crater Corpus Niskus, 400 kilometers to the north. If Corpus Niskus ejecta could be identified in the Apollo 12 samples, it might be possible to determine the rock types of the Corpus Niskus target area and establish the age of the Copernicus impact. The latter would provide an important collaboration on point for the lunar stratigraphic time scale. As you can see, this is one of the rocks that they brought back, and it's about 5-ish inches. And this is them showing how they collected different samples and things. This would help NASA with learning more about the moon and what it is made of. They spent a total of 31.6 hours on the moon and collected a total of 11 samples. Now that they are on the moon and have their samples, how do they get back? Well, once they were set to go back, they lifted off back into orbit. They had a little bit of an issue with a mid-course correction maneuver happening on November 22nd. This was when the Apollo 12 was about 208,000 miles from Earth. Another correction maneuver they thought they were going to need on November 23rd, but it ended up working out. But finally, on November 24th, Apollo 12 ended their 10-day mission. They landed on the Southeast Pacific. That was when the USS Hornet rescued the men and the rest of the space shuttle, as you can see in these pictures. In the end of their adventure, the Apollo 12 mission was a significant achievement in the space exploration. This showed many capabilities for NASA to overcome and successfully land on the moon for a second time and help with the space achievements. We went through the adventure of finding which astronauts to send and that would fit the mission, to landing on the moon, to collecting samples, and back to landing safely on Earth. The Apollo 12 mission showed bravery and success for future astronauts, helping NASA to achieve a new challenge and help with future missions.